This is Polish Peter, and welcome to episode 77 of Immigrant Masters Unite. How would you like to find out about a strategy that's going to help you get your product out there and create a multi-million-dollar company from scratch with a single product? Hi, this is Polish Peter, and welcome to this particular episode. On today's episode, I've interviewed Adam, who is originally from Poland, right back in my old, neck of woods, and we talked about crowdfunding. If you never heard of crowdfunding, this is the episode for you to be on, because he literally started from a single guitar and built a company, $1.2 million in revenue, as we were talking on this particular podcast. So I encourage you guys to listen, because he literally talks about how he created crowdfunding, how he scaled it, how he, did it, what he had to do to actually make it happen, right? The action steps that he took to make sure that this thing is going to work and it's going to be successful, right? How he created the prototype, right? Why it's important to do that, and what MVP stands for and why it's important. So I will highly encourage you to listen to this particular episode. Not only did he reveal some of those things about crowdfunding, but it was a great conversation that's going to help you create the life that you truly want. Okay? So without further ado, here is Adam Klosowiak. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of Immigrant Masters Unites, where immigrants unite and transform lives. That's right. This podcast is all about helping you transform your life, your business, and the world around you. And I'm your host, Polish Peter. Now, you may or may not be an immigrant entrepreneur. That's perfectly fine. However, on this particular podcast, I get to talk to first and second generation immigrants and actually get into their lives and dissect and strategize and get into their minds of why is it that they've become so successful in their own right, being an immigrant or being a kid of an immigrant who came here from somewhere outside of this particular country. In this particular episode, I have such a guest. His name is Adam Klosowiak. In Poland, we say it Klosowiak. So his parents were originally from Poland, came here in 81 from Warsaw, from the capital of Poland. So this is a really cool, because as you guys know, I'm Polish too, so there's a lot of good connections there. So I'm really excited to have Adam here on this particular podcast. Adam is a co-founder and CEO of Klosowiak Guitars, and he started Klosowiak Guitars with his brother Ian in the final semester of Princeton University. So he was still in university, started this company where he earned his electrical engineering degree there. And after graduating, and while Klosowiak Guitars was getting off the ground, Adam, he spent actually a year in Australian Alps in Innsbruck, where he was teaching English with the Fulbright program. By the way, so you're in Austria teaching English to an Austrian people?
That's right.
How did that work, man? How did you teach somebody who's Austrian? Do you speak Austrian? I mean, not Austrian. I guess it's not an Austrian language, but
So they speak German there. I was just the English teacher there, so they did have some level of English proficiency. And I taught actually every class in the high school. So it ranged from the freshmen to the seniors. And there were different degrees of English ability. But for the most part, it was native language speaking. Okay. So we just had conversations. And yeah, they do speak German in Austria, though. But I had to pretend that I didn't speak German just so that they wouldn't talk to me in German.
Okay. All right. So do you speak German?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool, man. So, okay. Afterwards, so he spent a year working as a management consultant in DC. And afterwards, he went full-time with Klosowiak Guitars. Now he lives in Park City, as an avid fan of nearly every outdoor sport you can think of, which I'm hoping it includes soccer, right? Because you got to have soccer, right?
I used to play soccer, not as much anymore.
All right, good. But you're a fan of it. That's good. Okay. Currently, listen, guys, just to give you an idea of what the Klos Guitars is, it's a company where he sells guitars, and I'll let him talk more about it. Guitars that you can actually travel with. And that company brings them about 1.2 million a year in revenue right now. So it's been pretty successful. So listen, Adam, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. So first and foremost, I want to get some insight from you as far as your story of growing up in an immigrant household. So how was that for you?
Yeah. So thanks for having me on the podcast. Really excited to chat. So growing up I grew up in Glenview. It's one of the suburbs of Chicago. And there are actually a lot of Polish people in that area. I think at one point Chicago was the second most populated Polish city after Warsaw. Mm-hmm. And then Krakow was next. So, it was interesting. At home, we would speak Polish. I had 3 older brothers. It was a very Polish household in the sense of, we did eat a lot of Polish food. We did go back to Poland every year for the whole summer when we were younger. And then every other year, once flights started getting crazy expensive. And then when we'd go to school, it was almost like that whole Polish background and Polish part of my life was forgotten. And, we were just integrated into, we were normal Americans at school. Everything was in English. Being Polish didn't really change anything about being in school. So it was kind of living in 2 different worlds. And that was very cool, actually. And I really loved that I had that opportunity growing up because it almost automatically raised me with an open mind to other cultures. If you have 2 different cultures, then you can imagine there's a third and a fourth and, 100 other cultures. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an important thing to discover because of the fact that when we are brought in one culture, and you literally are put in a different culture, like it's growing up at school, right? You kind of get a sense of like what it's like for somebody to growing up there, right? And they have different views and they have different ways of living it and all that kind of stuff. So I think that judgment of how somebody lives or how somebody does it, it's a little bit different, right? And allows you to have a different perspective. So as far as the, because you're an entrepreneur, obviously, you have your own company. And I think before the call, you mentioned that your mom was an architect, dad was a professor back in Poland. So they came here. So do they have this entrepreneurial spirit that kind of got, you got from them? Or is it something you just decided to do on your own?
I definitely didn't get it from my parents. My grandpa in Poland actually at one point had his own business where he would harvest lumber and sell wood as lumber to different factories. And during the war that was shut down by the government, some tax scheme it really demolished my grandfather and the whole business. And I think that actually instilled, anti-entrepreneurial feelings in my dad, in that he wanted a job. He didn't want to rise up in management. He just wanted to be an engineer. So my dad studied mechatronics as undergrad and master's, and then material science PhD. And then he was an assistant professor at the Polytechnic Institute in Warsaw. And then when he moved to the US, he was an engineer for RCA for a few years, and then at Motorola for about 25 years. So he's been an engineer most of his life. And he definitely enjoyed doing the technical work the most, and didn't want to run a company or run a big team. And that's totally fine. My mom was an architect in Poland, and once she had 4 kids, that was her full-time job. But there are many elements of, you don't necessarily need to be running a company to be entrepreneurial. I would say my parents even leaving Poland and moving to the US and raising a family in a foreign place, there are very many entrepreneurial qualities that you need, because that's really like starting anew in many ways. So they definitely, that sense of adventure, being able to take risk, not being afraid to do something that many other people aren't doing. All of that, I think my parents showed me through their actions, not necessarily through their careers, but I think all of that translated to, taking risks and being adventurous and all that.
Right. Yeah, man, that's a really good point, because when you come here and you start something new, it is entrepreneurial. So I like that you share that with us. So why are you an entrepreneur? Why you have your own business?
Yeah. So I went to Princeton for electrical engineering, and I loved going there. It was a great school. But one complaint that me and all my fellow electrical engineers always had was, the program was so theoretical. We didn't focus that much on actually building things, on making things. It was a lot of, just semiconductor physics and circuit diagrams and all this stuff. You'd finish a problem set and it'd be 6 pages long of math formulas. Right. And you come out with one number and you're like, what does this even mean? And so my junior year of college, me and 2 friends were like, hey, let's enter a hackathon and actually build something and see if we can actually, exercise our electrical engineering ability. And so we entered into this hackathon. We built this power strip that you could control each outlet with your phone. So via Bluetooth. So you'd plug in a lamp, you could turn it on and off from your phone. And this was 5 years ago now. So Internet of Things was a buzzword, just like it still is. And we ended up building it in 24 hours, and we won the hackathon. And the prize was to do a summer accelerator in LA for the summer. And we didn't end up taking that opportunity, but in evaluating whether or not we should take the opportunity, we were thinking about market size, product market fit. How would you scale this power strip? We built this thing in 24 hours, so we only thought about the technical side. But now all of a sudden we were exposed to so many other important factors. Like if you want this product to be successful in the market, then you need to think about all these things. And that to me was one of the most exciting adventures and experiences that I had had until that point in school, because, it wasn't, you were doing some homework, handing it in, getting a grade, and that's it. You were thinking about how might this invention that I just made change people's lives, even if it's in a small way, but it might change how someone interacts with their devices in their home, or it might change how energy consumption is happening passively in your house. And so that was that sparked in me this idea that entrepreneurship and working with a startup with a new idea and thinking about how it, not just the product, but how it interacts with the world. That was kind of the beginning of my interest. And then, fast forward a year, I was out visiting my brother Ian here in Utah, and he had made one guitar for a class, and it was this carbon fiber travel guitar prototype. And he wanted me to enter the idea into a business competition. And I obviously had very limited experience at that point, but I definitely had the energy, and I knew enough that I could pull together a 5-minute video. I think that's what the application was. And we ended up winning $1,000, and that was enough to build a second prototype. And then, the next 4 years flew by.
From there. Okay, gotcha. The rest is a history, right? So I got a question for you because before the call, guys, we talked about he has a unique way. Well, not so much unique, but for some people it is unique of starting his company. So he, the company Kloss Guitar started from a crowdfunding, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about that because a couple of things that I want to make sure that people hear here is the typical way of starting a business, especially when you're coming in from another country. A lot of times what people do is either they borrow the money from their family or they have their own money that they start with, or they go to the bank to go and borrow money from the bank to start a company, or they just bootstrap it, from, whatever they have, just $100 or whatever it might be. And those are, ways of starting a company. And, I started my company back in 2007, 2008 by bootstrapping it basically from nothing. Another way of doing it is through crowdfunding. So I want you, Adam, to kind of first tell us what exactly is crowdfunding and how did you guys do that for your own company?
Yeah. So crowdfunding as a concept essentially is prior to an idea existing at scale, you market this product to a group of people. So for Kickstarter, you market it to the Kickstarter community and you say, hey, I have this great idea. This is what it is. I don't have any money and we haven't yet made this, but if you want the product, then pay for it now. And then once we reach a certain threshold of funding, then we'll have enough funding to actually make the product. We'll work on it. And then eventually you ship the product to that customer. So it's kind of like glorified pre-ordering. And most, that's for product crowdfunding, I should say. There are also many other things you can crowdfund. You can crowdfund a music album or, a community service project. There are a ton of different areas. The most popular is products, obviously, because the customer has, an incentive to help the company, but they also get the product in exchange for their donation. So,
I got a question for you. So why would somebody pay you before you even put the product together? Maybe because that might be one of the objections that people will have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people have had very bad experiences with crowdfunding. And there are many companies out there that have definitely, I think, taken advantage of the crowdfunding system. But it comes down to, a lot of people like having the newest tech, early adopters, as we call them. They want to have the newest gadget, the newest guitar, the newest whatever that's coming out. And they love supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So those are two of the biggest reasons. For us, we were launching a carbon fiber guitar at a price point that had been unheard of. The most expensive, and I can also maybe after this jump into some background on carbon fiber guitars and why that's even a thing. But yeah, carbon fiber guitars before our company were $1,300 plus, and we were launching one at $400 on our first campaign. So a lot of people who wanted an expensive carbon fiber guitar, they were very interested. We had a compelling pitch for, our skill set and our ability to actually execute the idea. So yeah, that was kind of how and why we launched.
Okay. So how did you guys made out on the first crowdfunding? How did that go?
Yeah. So, that first business competition that I did here in Utah was February of 2015. We actually ended up getting a Princeton Summer Accelerator in May of 2015, right when I was graduating. Mm-hmm. And then we were working on the company that whole summer. And we did the first Kickstarter June of 2015, and it raised $33,000.
Okay.
And that was about 70 instruments. So yeah, that was the first campaign.
All right. So I got a question for you because you guys did subsequent campaigns after that, right?
That's right.
How many did you guys do in total?
We've actually done 7 total.
7 total?
Yeah.
And then the number of backers went up every single time?
Yeah. So the first one raised 33,000. The second one did 103. The third one was 303,000. The fourth one jumped down, I think, to 120. Yeah, there's so many. Fifth one was our full-size guitar. That was about 100. Yeah. And then the ukulele was pretty big. That was about 300. But that was over the span of more than 1 month.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about it, because guess what, guys? Listen, what he just shared is he just started the company literally from scratch in a way and used the crowdfunding idea to sell $300,000 worth of guitars. Or at first time, he sold $30-some thousand worth of guitars right off the bat, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, what do you think was the reason, like, why was it successful to that point, and what worked, what didn't work, to kind of like give people idea on how they could structure themselves? Because I think what you've used is, the fact that you guys did you use the accelerator in your crowdfunding page? Like, how was it believable? Why would I go ahead because to me, if the guitars are $1,300 for a guitar, right? And then you guys are selling for $400, that seems like too good to be true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of questions in there. So the accelerator that we were in, really, it was a 10-week program that walked you through different aspects of starting a company. So it was very useful, but it wasn't necessarily that related to the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I mean, first, I think, the main question is how are we so successful on crowdfunding? I think it's important first to realize why you would want to start with crowdfunding as opposed to some of the other methods of starting a company that you mentioned. So with crowdfunding, you get customers, you get a product market fit, you get money up front before you have to, make anything really. So, if we sold 70 guitars, we bought enough to make 70 and then some. We didn't have to buy 1,000 of each in an inventory. And the most important thing is you keep all the equity. So you don't have to give away equity to raise money, or you don't have to take on debt and start paying large amounts of interest. So those are the reasons why we started with crowdfunding. And yeah, crowdfunding is a whole, there are podcasts that are just about crowdfunding and how to do it. But in general, the most important thing is you want to present the product in a very clean and professional way. So you need to have high quality images, high quality video that's engaging, and the pitch for the pain point that it solves has to be very clear. So, for us, that point was wooden guitars are very fragile. To sound good, a wooden guitar has to be fragile. If you want to travel with the guitar, then wood is certainly not the best material since it is fragile. And so carbon fiber is a great alternative. And then existing carbon fiber guitars were very expensive. And so our solution was to make an inexpensive carbon fiber travel guitar that would really be the ultimate travel guitar. And so that's the thesis that you then have to show with images, show with a great video, and then you have to know how to advertise it. So advertising it on Facebook, on Google, word of mouth, musicians, just really spreading it around everywhere. And so our first campaign was very grassroots. We did a lot of manual emailing. We recruited family and friends to help, obviously. We did a little bit of paid advertising, but not as much as we do now, or not as much as we did in subsequent campaigns. But yeah, that's kind of how it started with the first one.
Okay, so let me go over a couple of things to make sure that we're on the same page, okay? So what I'm hearing is, one, the first thing, you gotta have product that people want. Like you saw that there was a problem, right? When you're traveling and you want to take your guitar with you, right? There is a possibility of breaking it. So you guys created a product that people would want, that they're looking for. So there was a need for it, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is you guys use because at this point, when you guys are putting out the first crowdfunding, how many guitars do you guys have to sell?
When we launched our first one, we had 2 guitars.
2 guitars, right? Those are the prototypes, right?
Yep, exactly.
So did you guys use those guitars and the advertisements on the page?
Yeah, we used those 2 guitars for everything. So it seemed like we had way more guitars, but we only had those 2.
Okay, so you've actually had some kind of prototype and you use that to show people that this is real, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing, right? That you're not just talking about the product, but you're showing that it is real.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And so high quality images, high quality videos, you mentioned that. And I think that is the reason for doing that, is to make sure that you're showing them like this isn't some kind of a third scam kind of thing, right? And that helps with that. Okay. Also, so as far as like what was on the page, you probably talked about the problem, right? Then you show the guitar. Did you give some kind of specs about it? Did you go, I want to get an idea, was it speaking to both the engineer type of a person and speaking to a person who just wants the guitar, right? Did you guys think all that?
Yeah, I mean, the target audience was sort of multifaceted. There were some people who just wanted a travel guitar. And so to them, we talked about the specs, the dimensions of the product, the scale length. There are a million specs on a guitar that are important to a guitarist.
Okay.
There were people that just loved carbon fiber and they would buy carbon fiber anything. And so to them, we talked about the carbon fiber technology a little bit more. There are people who just love buying non-traditional products on crowdfunding. So, those people just love that we were trying to sell a guitar on crowdfunding. So there were a lot of different people in the first campaign, and that still is true today. People buy the guitar for different reasons, but the majority of people are buying our instruments because they want a durable instrument that is resistant to temperature and humidity, whether that's for travel or just even to keep in your house because you live in dry Arizona or Utah. Even Utah is very dry in the summer and winter, and cold and hot. So yeah, the target audience is really kind of all over.
Okay. But then what I'm hearing is you spoke their language, right? Because saying certain things about the guitar, it's something that they're like, oh, you know what? He gets it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You need to speak the language of the customer that you're trying to reach, for sure.
Okay. All right. And then what you said in the first crowdfunding, you did a lot of emailing, a lot of what's it called? Footwork, right? Grassrooting kind of thing, emailing, doing a little bit of advertising and things like that to get people. And so did you give any kind of incentives for people to be able to spread the word, or was it just come naturally? Or
the first one, the first campaign, now when I look back on it, it was very inexperienced. We didn't have much experience at all. We could have done it better, but yeah, I mean, we had so much passion and energy for it that I think we just spread that energy with everyone we talked to. With friends, it was, hey, we're taking a risk and starting this crazy idea company. If you can post it on your Facebook, or, we reached out to the Princeton Alumni Network. We reached out to BYU alumni where my brother went to school. And really just tried to tell anyone who would listen about it. Mm-hmm. And randomly, someone would know someone who was interested. And so, yeah, it was very grassroots. It wasn't like a campaign with advertising and that, we knew would work. But that's kind of what you have to do at the beginning, because that's right. It also gives you a lot of feedback. While you're pitching, it gives you practice too. You have to practice selling your idea in person, and your friends will be the first to tell you their honest feedback. Whereas someone you don't know that well will be like, oh yeah, no, that's a good idea, but they actually think it's horrible.
Okay.
So yeah, that pitching and that outreach, I think also teaches you a lot, and it hones your ability to pitch really.
Okay. So how did you overcome the objection of like, this is too good to be true? Like $400 only for $1,300 guitar? How do you go that?
So we definitely underpriced it, I think, in the beginning. Now our travel guitar starts at $600, which is still much more affordable than $1,300, but the margins are much healthier and sustainable. But yeah, the main thing is that we're the only guitar that is carbon fiber body and soundboard and a wooden neck. So all other carbon fiber guitars, there are 5 other companies in the world, they make a full carbon fiber guitar. And the neck being made out of carbon fiber is actually quite a challenging part to make because the contour and the shape is quite difficult. And so we made that part out of wood, which is obviously very traditional and quite inexpensive to make. And then the soundboard and the body are pretty simple pieces to make. And so the cost of those was not that high. So the combination of choosing wood for the neck and carbon fiber for the body and soundboard, and then our lean manufacturing method really allowed us to drive the cost down. And then we knew that the price point had to be around between $400 and $600 because other wooden travel guitars that were popular were about that price.
Okay.
And so that was kind of our price target. And so, yeah, we just, made it work on the material and labor side. And it helps that for the first couple of years of the company, we didn't really pay ourselves at all. So,
okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Labor was free.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you guys basically did a lot of research and you've justified the pricing by the research and kind of like, basically like here's how it is,
Yeah.
To pass it on. Right. So looking back through all the different campaigns that you guys done, because you said you did about 7 of them right now. What are some of the lessons that you guys learned that allowed you guys to be successful in the crowdfunding? What are some of the things that were good?
Yeah. So, I quickly realized after the first campaign, I think we spent like $1,000 on advertising in the first campaign. I realized, and I think most people realize this, is that to get a huge campaign going, you do have to spend money on advertising. It's very, very difficult to break 100,000, 200, 300,000 without actually just spending a lot of money on Facebook and Google and driving traffic to your page. And that's the main thing. So finding a good advertising partner or learning to do it yourself is one of the most important things. And with that, we've also shifted from launching. Our first one was launching a company. We didn't really have anything, right. And we were not just launching a guitar, but we were launching a company. That has shifted to, we now have a stable company that's doing pretty well, but we're still launching on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And for us now, it's just a new product launch platform. So the pitch now is a little different. It's not, hey, we have this crazy idea. We don't know if it'll work and we're a new team. It's basically, hey, we've done this before. We have a new product. It's awesome. If you order on Kickstarter, you're definitely going to get it on time. And it's exactly what we're telling you it is. And that is also reassuring for a lot of people. And so now, whenever we launch something, we have fairly good success with it because we have an existing customer base. We have good reviews. We have some legitimacy. So it's kind of shifted over time.
Okay. So you guys use that, right? Like testimonials, you use that in there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You guys have proof that you've shipped out before and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen that you guys made that you've learned from?
Our biggest mistake at the very beginning was underestimating the difficulty of supply chain. So, it's funny at the end of that summer accelerator, there was an investor pitch where every company that was in the program pitched to a bunch of VCs in New York. And we had, 20 slides or something like that. And we didn't even have a slide about supply chain because we didn't even know what supply chain was. We assumed, we need wood, so we'll order wood and we'll get wood. We need carbon fiber parts and we need it constructed like this, so we'll just order it and it'll come on time. When the reality is, when you're making a part and designing it for someone else to manufacture, for example, like we had our necks manufactured by someone else because we wanted to work on the carbon fiber ourselves, but we wanted to outsource the neck. It took many, many months to we send them the design, they send us the first sample. The sample was wrong, so we had to tweak some things. So then they send us a second sample. All that takes months. and in the meantime, our customers are like, hey, where's our product? And we're like, sorry, it's taking longer than we thought. So our first campaign, we were actually late 6 months, which was, really painful for me because I always like being on time and I like fulfilling the promises I make. And it was brutal being honest with customers and saying like, hey, we will get there, but it'll take us some extra time. So supply chain we underestimated. Since then, we've definitely made leaps and bounds in supply chain and just forecasting. We don't tell customers for crowdfunding that we'll ship it next month. We tell them 4 months and then maybe it'll take 3 months. So now we're always on time or early, but at the beginning, we definitely didn't really understand that.
Okay. So a couple of things I'm hearing from this conversation is one, at the beginning, when you guys were started doing this, you obviously overestimated the supply chain and all that kind of stuff. But what happened to solve that problem, you were being authentic with the customer, right?
Yeah.
Basically said you weren't trying to hide anything and all that kind of stuff. And you put out there and then said, this is what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And there might have been some angry people, right? But I don't know how it came up at the end of it because you ended up shipping the whole thing, right? To everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second thing I've heard is now your perspective on the company is under promise and over deliver, right?
Yeah.
And that comes with even the estimates on how much when you're going to ship it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you do that when your own company just now? Because now you have a business that's basically running itself. Well, you guys are running it, right? Is that philosophy coming to play as well?
The under promising and over delivering?
Yeah.
In certain ways, a little bit, but for the most part now, we try to match it pretty well. We promise that it will be a great product. It'll come on time. And we pretty much meet that expectation every time. So obviously, when you have a product, you want to hype it up and you want to build it up to the customer. And we definitely do that, and I think the product matches expectation. We actually have an incredibly low return rate. It's under 2%, which for online is extremely low. Usually, in retail, it's sometimes in the 30% range because it's so easy to buy something and return it these days. And online too, especially with Amazon, it's easy to buy, test something out, return it, full refund. But yeah, almost everyone that's buying our instruments is keeping them. So that's a great
Why do you think that is?
When you get the instrument and you see it in person, it's really awesome. And I think that experience of opening it, playing it for the first time, seeing the carbon fiber in person, especially when you've only seen it online, I think it's an incredible first impression. And the people that are buying it, especially with the purpose of traveling, I think when they go on their first trip and they have their instrument with them and they can play music and they can enjoy that, I think that's an experience that is pretty memorable. And so people don't want to return that.
Okay, gotcha. So packaging, is it pretty basic? Is it pretty kind of like Apple kind of a packaging?
Our packaging is actually pretty intricate because our guitars can fold in half. Actually, you can take the neck off, and that makes it much more portable if you're constrained on space. So we actually ship the guitar folded in half so that every customer has to learn how to assemble it from day one. We have a gig bag, a backpack that fits the guitar when it's fully assembled and when it's disassembled.
Mm-hmm.
And so we basically disassemble it, put it in that gig bag. We've got a lot of bubble wrap and all that just to make sure it's safe. We don't have the Apple style, like the painted box with a cool logo, and that we're definitely working on that eventually. But for now, we just ship in a standard cardboard box. But when it comes out, the product speaks for itself, for sure.
Do they know that they're getting that bag as well? Or is it like a surprise?
So everything is upfront on what's included with each one. So we have a few different products. So the most basic one, if you're trying to get the most affordable option, doesn't come with any accessories, and we do that so that some people don't want accessories; they just want the cheapest product. And so having been a college student recently, I totally understand that. Right. And then we have a package deal where you can upgrade to have all the accessories. We've got a carbon fiber stiffening rod upgrade to make the neck a little stronger. We have a deluxe model of each instrument, which has upgraded components, the tuners, the nut, saddle, better strings, and that comes with all the accessories. So we have a spectrum, just so that if someone wants to spend more, they can. If someone doesn't, that's fine too.
Okay, cool, man. So listen, if somebody were to think about starting their company using crowdfunding, what would you tell them?
So I would say, get the product. So first, make the product. You need a prototype either way. So that's kind of the whole concept of MVP, minimum viable product. That's a huge topic, and a lot of people have different opinions on it. I would say, get a prototype that displays the main features that you're trying to display. It doesn't have to be perfect, and by all means, don't make it perfect. If we had waited to make the perfect closed travel guitar, that would have taken us 2 years. And so I'm glad that we made one that worked. We launched. Once you have that prototype, get it in the hands of people that are willing to give you feedback, whether that's early customers who are honest, or your friends or family, or, really it should be people that would use the product. That's the most important thing. Get feedback from them, see, what people like, what people don't like, and use that to build your marketing. So, if everyone keeps complimenting the way something looks, then that you should really show that off in your marketing. And once you have kind of the marketing dialed in, once you have the feedback dialed in, then I think that's when you can start building your campaign. Again, high quality images and videos, that's key for crowdfunding, just because, with the Instagram age that we live in, everything looks good out there. So if your images and content doesn't look good, then you're behind. And then once you have the content, once you have the prototype, once you have the pitch, then it's just a matter of getting the traffic. So figure out a way to get traffic to your page, whether that's paid traffic or influencers or organic social media, just whatever it takes. At the end of the day, you just want as much traffic as possible.
Okay. All right. And you guys use Kickstarter.com?
We used Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So we've used more Kickstarter. I think that's the better one to start with.
Okay.
They have more users than Indiegogo, but Indiegogo is also great.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Yeah. I just actually invested in one of the products recently in Indiegogo. So that's awesome. Interesting. So yeah, that's very cool. All right. So listen, I want to make sure that I respect your time and respect the time of listeners here. So I want to go into my Polish Peter's final round. And my first question is, do you have a book that you would recommend to the listeners?
So probably in terms of a practical book, I would say How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's a great book. Yeah, it really teaches you how to think about the other person that you're talking to, not just, you.
Exactly right. Love that book. All right, awesome. Next question is, I know that you are the second generation immigrant here, and your parents are from Poland, and you've traveled to Poland many times and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything that you want to share about maybe the old country or custom or food or saying or anything like that in regards to that people wouldn't normally know about?
Yeah, I honestly love going back to Poland. The food is great. I love kotlets, schabowy, or pierogi. I've definitely made those dishes at my house here. But yeah, I don't know if I have any special insight. Usually when I go to Poland, I just hang out with my cousins and family. So
where's that?
It's usually in Warsaw and oftentimes in Krynica Morska or Stegna.
Okay.
These two smaller villages just right on the Baltic Sea.
Yeah, that's up north there. You ever go to Zakopane?
Yeah, I was in Zakopane just for New Year's Eve, actually. Yeah, I was hiking and staying in some of the mountain huts there.
Wow,
Zakopane is great.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. And especially on New Year's Eve, that's awesome, man. Talk about snow and everything.
Yeah.
All right, next question is, I believe that every single person in the world has a superpower. What do you think is your superpower?
What is my superpower? Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess my superpower would maybe be just my ability to think about everything holistically. I think that's maybe where I might be above average, if I am above average in anything. Just, especially when you're starting a company, you've got to think about every aspect. You need to think about the financials, you need to think about the marketing, you need to think about engineering. Once your company is big and there's a department for everything, as the head of the company, you need to have a pretty intuitive understanding of everything to make sure that it all fits. Not to mention working with people and motivating other people and also making sure to take care of your personal life as well. So I think that's an area that I like to think I'm pretty good at, but I don't know if I'd call it a superpower.
All right. Listen, I mean, you never know, because there's a lot of people who, that particular area, I mean, they have no idea how to do that, right? Or they're not very good at it. So if that's something that pops up for you, man, that's probably it. So listen, next question I have for you is, if someone wants to get a hold of you or maybe get one of those guitars, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so our website is just www.klosoguitars.com, and KLOS is how you spell close. So klosoguitars.com. We're on Instagram as well, Close Guitar, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, every platform you can think of. Okay,
very cool. I'll put that in the notes if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, man, Adam, thank you so much for sharing about your experiences with crowdfunding and some of the successes and failures on doing that. And I think it would hopefully spark some of the ideas for the listeners here. I personally haven't done crowdfunding, but I know a lot of people have done it successfully. It's a very viable and really cool way of scaling your business and actually getting it off the ground. As you mentioned here, you were able to start your company doing it that way. So I'm sure this call was, probably helped someone out there. So I really appreciate you being here, man. I appreciate you listeners for listening to this podcast, because guess what? Without you, I would not be able to do what I do. I would not be able to share these immigrants and masters and be able to help them. If you are listening on this podcast somewhere out on the internet, you can always come back to mastersunite.com. That's mastersunite.com. That's where all the episodes are at, the show notes and all that kind of stuff, and ability to reach out to these people that I interview on this particular podcast. So without further ado, this is Polish Peter from Immigrant Masters Unite, and I will see you on the next podcast.